Alright, it is April 4th, 2026. It is a Monday evening in Houston, Texas. Looking out on a beautiful city. Gonna do another video here talking about male and female relationships and how we can improve them. So anyway, and how have I been doing that? I've been doing that with criminal cases. And also looking at dual mating strategy. That's also been another tool I've been using. So, and that's been real important. The dual mating strategy, if you don't know, if you don't know, it is the alpha seed or alpha bang guy. He's the guy that the women have an urgency to have sex with. They want his genes. They're the ones that's the guy they lust after. That's the guy that they feel, that gives them tingles. And then you have the beta male provider. The beta male provider is the guy that is protection, providing, and parenting. But as we've seen, it would be nice if it could be found in one man, but usually it's not. And it would be nice if maybe, females would want, sometimes they want a beta male provider because they're at a certain point in their life or a certain, situation in their life, and those are sometimes the dangerous ones, the ones in situations, so they tend to look for, or sometimes, the younger girls are going to go for the alpha bangs, or maybe an older woman that's getting out of a divorce. I've seen that a lot, getting out of a divorce, and empty nester. She's been in a long marriage, and now she's looking to have fun. I've met a lot of those ladies, But anyway, so it's kind of, it's not black and white. There's gray. But anyway, and oftentimes that alpha bang and beta provider is not found in the same man. Rarely it is. I've talked about that too. So, but anyway, but I have made one thing clear: is must be, or not must, but it is much more advantageous to be the alpha seed or alpha bang guy than the beta male provider. The beta male provider is a utility. The beta male provider is not respected at all, really. It is something nice to have. It is something like, good boy Johnny, I'll give you a pat on the back, thank you for helping me, and once I'm done with you, we're good, thank you, unless you're only kept around as long as you're needed, it seems, in that role, as opposed to the alpha bang. If you're the alpha bang, she has to get it from you. You're that guy, we've seen, and I'm going to do another video later in a minute. I did the Jeremy Meeks case. Jeremy Meeks is the hot felon, known as the hot felon, the prison bae, and I'm going to do a breakdown of his wife, who did an interview, and she was awesome. And she said in the interview, I was married to him for 8 to 9 years. So of course I loved him, and I still love him. That's the alpha bang. That's the alpha widow, And she talks so nicely of him. So a lot of times you hear this, oh, he took half my stuff. He took half my stuff. Or she took half my stuff. Oh my God, she did this, she did that. Oh my God. Well, you probably presented yourself as the beta male provider, and I've been guilty of that before. And you think that it's going to be respected, or it's going to, because you put in all this, investment, that she should appreciate you just as much, or appreciate you for all the work you've done. But that's just not how women work. It's not. I mean, it'd be nice if it was, but we're not going to hate them for it. That's just the animal they are, And so we got to know the game and play it accordingly. So, but today's case, move along here. Today's case is in Evansville, Indiana, and it involves a gentleman named Robbie Doer. Robbie Doer was a hero. He was a first responder. He was a fireman, and he was a fireman in Evansville, Indiana, and full-time fireman. But he also had a full-time job as well at Taco John's because he was a hard worker and provided for his family. That's much to be respected, and I honor him. He's a hero. Fireman. Not only was he a hero, he was a father, he was a provider, And never do I say in any of these videos that just because maybe they chose to be a beta male provider that they're a lesser than person. No, that's just who they chose to be, and we honor and respect them, you know. So, but anyway, yeah. So, but also in this story, the other characters is Becky Doer. She went by Elizabeth. She was Elizabeth Doer, but she went by Becky Doer. I don't know why, but Becky Doer ended up being his wife. He met her working at Taco John's. She was a fellow employee. And they got along well. Becky Doer seemed to be, you know, she had a look to her, but I bet she could turn on the charm. You know, I've said this before. There's, you know, beta male predator women. They can turn on that charm. You know, they know how to get. They know they can sense you. They can sense the beta male in you, and they know how to turn the sexy on. You know, and I say, how do you know if you're a beta male provider or whatever? How do you know she's just turning the sexy on? You know, to get something? Well, I say she should be having America Got Talent type tryouts sex with you, you know. And if it stops after y'all get married, when she gets what she wants, then you're probably beta male provider. But if it keeps going along into your marriage, you're the alpha bang, you know, because women use their sexuality to, you know, to perform and keep you around. You know, not only that, but, I mean, that's one of the reasons, but that's the most powerful agency. You know what I mean? So anyway, we got. And then we have her sister. Her sister was like a half sister. Becky Doer was adopted. So anytime you get that adoption, you know, there's sometimes, you know, she was in the foster system. And, but anyway, see, maybe like a tough childhood, you know, not a real stable childhood. And her sister was Amanda Fillmore, went by Mandy. And they weren't like blood sisters. I think they were half sisters. But they both went through the foster system. Mandy was dating a guy who we need to introduce, is Larry Richmond Sr. And then the other guy is his son, Larry Richmond Jr. Okay, those are our characters in this case. So, but anyway, what ends up happening is, you know, Robbie Doer's, you know, doing his thing. He's kind of single, and you know, he meets Becky Doer at the Taco John's, and you know, she, I guess, does her thing, and you know, they get along and they get married. You know. Anyway, and she doesn't work anymore. He allows her to be a stay-at-home mom, or I say stay-at-home mom. I don't even think she had young kids. She had an older son that lived with them off and on, you know. But once again, there he is. He had some kids too, but they were older. You know, Bobby Doer was an older gentleman. You know, probably in his 50s like me. You know, but yeah. So Becky Doer did not have any younger kids. But he did, like I said, he did allow her older son to live with them. So what ends up happening is, you know, there must have been some issues in the marriage, because at one point, you know, Robbie Doer, like I've said, you know, if you suspect an affair going on, there probably is, you know. And he wrote her a 9-page letter right before his demise. He becomes our murder victim. Like I said, you gotta know when you're respected. You gotta know when you're loved. You gotta know when she does not love or respect you anymore, okay? And there's key signs in this, I'll tell you. He wrote a 9-page letter. If you're writing letters to your wife to touch you, to hug you, to kiss you more, you are not rested. That is disrespect. That is lack of interest. Your wife should be banging the hell out of you. You know, like America Got Talent, until the day she's gone out your house. If she loses that urge, if you're in a sexless marriage, get the hell out. Okay, if you have a downtime, you know, whatever, you're both busy, but she better be on top of that, saying, we're going to get this back together, Daddy, don't worry, I'm going to come suck that D. Or she should be making, you know, you haven't had time, maybe, you know, whatever. She should be making references to how hot you are, how much she wants to bang you, blah, blah. I mean, it can last so long to where she, you know, she has to put in the goods. She can't just be, oh, I would love to, no. But you can kind of tell. I mean, if she's not wanting to touch you, if she don't want to be around you, nah. And that's what Robbie Doer says. You don't want to hug me anymore. You don't want to kiss me anymore. You know. And I found a text on. He just said something about a text. You know. You have that text on your phone. Apparently, he found something. You know. And so, like I've said, if you think you found something, you found something. You know. Don't go snooping. You already know. You shouldn't be. You should never think that your wife is cheating. Never. Or your girlfriend cheating, or whoever you're with, your exclusive relationship person. You know. If you think they're cheating, they're cheating. You know. Because you should never have that thought, you know. With a minor cursory investigation, you should know, you know. Run it by some buddies. Run it by one or two buddies. And if they, let them tell you. And honest buddies, not some dishonest buddies. But anyway, But because Robbie Doer doesn't act on that information, it leads to his demise, because that came, I believe, 2 weeks before he was murdered. So he knew something was up. He knew, So anyway, so what ends up happening is, Larry's a good guy, and I'm sorry, not Larry. Robbie Doer is a good guy, but so he was filling in for somebody at the fire department. So apparently, usually firemen work a 24-hour shift. A lot of them. I know in Houston they do. But on this occasion, since he was working overtime, he only worked a 12-hour shift. So normally he gets off at 7 a.m. So I guess he worked from 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. Well, on this occasion, he got off at 7 p.m. Well, I guess Becky Doer knew, So Becky Doer says she was cooking dinner she gave an interview to the police, which don't recommend anyone doing. You go get your lawyer. You have that right. I'm not saying, stall police investigations, but get your lawyer. You never know what they're looking for. You never know if they're gonna, you don't know what, if they're gonna go beyond the scope and try to rail you into something. Just get your lawyer. There's nothing wrong with that. You have a right. You have a right to an attorney prior to and during any questioning. It's in the Miranda warning. And you have the right to terminate the interview at any time. Well, that interview ain't gonna begin until you get your lawyer. Anyway, and if they got to put you in jail, then you get your lawyer. It'd be better to spend one day in jail and save yourself from years in jail, right? So anyway, I digress, but that's something I'll always remind people of. And that comes from a law enforcement officer for 22 years, so, get your lawyer. Anyway, so, so Becky Doer's cooking dinner. Robbie Doer's gotten off work at 7 p.m., and she looks outside, and she hears she says she heard a couple of pops, loud bangs or something like that. Neighbors reported hearing 5 gunshots. Okay, so he got basically ambushed getting out of his car inside the driveway. A little suspicious. That usually is going to be a spouse. Okay, and what have I said? So what do we have going on that's similar to other cases? What's going on is you have an affair. There's an affair going on. Okay. There's lack of interest in sexuality, lack of affection. Robbie Doer is noticing. We've seen this in other cases. You connect the dots, right? It's I could use just this one case, but I'm continuing to put content out that will show you. Look, this ain't just a one-off. This continue. This is not just one person in one state, or it's just a fluke. No, this continues to happen. The same things. We're human beings. We notice patterns. I mean, if let's just say, I'm just making something up, but if you knew bowling balls were falling out of the sky, right at like 9 o'clock, you just kind of tracked it. Would you go outside at 9 o'clock? No. I'm gonna wait. And they end at 9:30. And the trend's way up. And yeah, I'm gonna wait. But anyway, I digress on that. But I'm just trying to show you. So anyway, the police are called, obviously, because and his fireman friends come out. Now they notice he's a fellow fireman. It really rocked them, dude. And they got kind of emotional. Obviously, they're brothers, those guys are awesome, but they couldn't save him, and they noticed he was shot with 2 types of ammunition, I believe 45 caliber and buckshot. Now there's one gun that does that. It's called the Taurus Judge. It's kind of a unique gun, and at one day after the murder, a couple days after the murder, I think it's a couple days after the murder, Larry Richmond Sr. gets pulled over with his son, Larry Richmond Jr., and I believe Amanda was in the car. But anyway, not important. But the bottom line is, they are found with a pistol in the car. And Larry Richmond Sr. did 22 years in state prison for murder. He shot a 70-year-old man, and he was sentenced to life, but I believe he was paroled after 22 years for killing a 70-year-old man. So he already had a history, okay? And so the affair that Robbie Doer thought his wife was having, it was with Larry Richmond Sr., the murder suspect, okay? He's the alpha bang, okay? What do we say about the alpha bang? There is no morality in sexuality. I've said that too, right? He's the felon, he's a, I guess, he was a black male. He was dating her sister. He was his sister's fiance. What do I also say? When you're the alpha bang, they don't care you're married. They don't care who you're dating. You're dating your sister. I don't care. They get real selfish. Now, again, there's no morality here. We're not drawing, oh, they're bad, they're good. Just saying how it works. You play accordingly now, right? So, so since he's a murderer, since he's a felon, Larry Richmond Sr. gets picked up on that. They start going through, at this point, Becky Doer comes in. She talks to the police without a lawyer, and she thinks a lot of times women think they can manipulate the police. So she goes in, gives her statement or whatever, and she gives like I've told you, you can't predict all possibilities. You can't predict all variables. She's gotten it all figured out what she's going to say. Well, what she didn't know was the police or the FBI had gotten into her cell phone already, I guess. And they noticed about, a couple minutes before the murder, she had deleted one phone call that day. One phone call. Never had deleted any other phone calls. Well, that was Larry Richmond Sr. calling her. I wonder what he wanted. And they noticed a lot of other calls from Larry Richmond Sr. on her phone. So, they had put two and two together. She was having an affair with him, right? And his cell phone is roaming around the area of Robbie Doer's house right before the murder. So, it's a pretty open and shut case on him, and now that, that deleted phone call, puts her and she never mentioned that phone call, although she mentioned all other kind of specific stuff, right? After they find out all this information, the cell phone data, them calling each other, her them being in an affair, and then they saw this is all circumstantial. Robbie Doer's note of not being taken care of, not being touched, thinking she's having an affair, and then Larry Richmond's son, Larry Richmond Jr., said that he saw Becky Doer and Robbie Doer kissing. Now there was some issues on the date of that kiss, and it couldn't have been them because they weren't together yet. But either way, the son stole the gun from the pawn shop he worked at. So he was kind of a thief, So like father, like son, I guess. I don't know, but yeah. So that was basically But Larry Richmond Sr., and this was said, he was known to have a bunch of girlfriends, not only Mandy Doer and not only not only Mandy Fillmore, Becky Doer's sister, but he had other girlfriends. And so here's the thing. You got your, and this is what you got to think about, especially in this case, is you got Robbie Doer, a hero, a fireman, working 2 jobs, manager at Taco John's, right? But, you've got to have, like I say, air, water, food, sex. He still needs that sex part of his life taken care of, right? And that means relationships, sexual relationship, girlfriend, wife, But Larry, we seem to have in our society, in our culture, you have some guys have all the luck, and some guys have all the pain in the song, right? Some guys have, I don't want to sing it, but go listen to it. Some guys have all the luck, right? But it's not about luck, It's about some guys know the working practices to be an alpha bang, And can we all be the same? Can we all have the same charisma? Can we all have the same body? No, we can't. But can you maximize, what you have? Let's say your charisma. Let's say your body. Let's say, your social game. Let's say your dominance, your just the way your swag around women. And I know that's not concrete, but these are things that, for this, video would be too long, but those things, look for these traits of an alpha male. Look, a calm, confident person. How do you get there? Look at ways to get there. That's what I did. There's plenty of stuff out there, but one way to get there is, again, working out, handling situations, interaction with boldness. Read the 48 Laws of Power. You interaction with boldness. Don't worry about making mistakes. You can make mistakes, but you learn from your mistakes. And a minor thing. I will digress real quick, just a little bit. My house is a small deal, but in my place, my place is getting hot. The other day. Well, last time they came and fixed my air conditioning, it was the air filter. Well, it was a pain in the ass. I didn't know it. I thought my air conditioner was going out, so I called someone to come fix it. And the guy's like, hey, your air filter's out, all clogged. I was like, nah, man, that ain't it. It was so hot in my place, and he's like, nope, air filter. So that was, about a year ago. Well, a couple days ago, when my air conditioning seems to get hot again, I learned from that, bad experience. Oh, I said, I'm gonna try to change the air filter. Boom, it worked. So my point is, sometimes you got to go through some. That day was like all hot in my house for all day when I waited for the guy to come fix it. Thinking my air was all out. I learned from that. I got wiser from that experience. Well, sometimes you go through things, they suck at the time, but you become wiser. Maybe a flat tire. I know. Okay. How or a leaky tire. I've had chicks ask me, how long can I make it on that leaky tire? I'll look at it. You're good. From experience, from driving on, it sucks to get leaky tire, but from experience, you go, you got about 10 minutes, or you got about 2 days, whatever. But anyway, so don't always look at negative experiences as, oh, the world sucks. No, it's teaching you things. That's why me at 50, I can teach you guys things. I'm learning things, right? So anyway, but let's I'll conclude this. So I'm going all day. So basically, Becky Doer goes to trial. She gets convicted for conspiracy to murder, and she's given 60 years for the murder and 30 years for conspiracy. So she's serving 90 years. She's eligible to get out when she's 118. So if she stays healthy, maybe by then she. Get a couple days out of jail there. And Larry Richmond Sr., I don't believe he's been sentenced yet, but his case is even stronger than hers. So he's cooked. So anyway, Robbie Doer, will have his 2 killers, pay for their crime, which is great, But what do we learn in this case, right? Well, and this was said, in the piece was, Robbie Doer made this statement, and this is something I don't want anyone to do. I've mentioned this. He said he felt bad that he brought up the affair to his wife, that he accused her, right? And he said he won't mention it anymore. And he felt like if he didn't mention it anymore, that it would go away. Well, that's not how those work. That's not how affairs work. They don't go away by you ignoring them. They go away by you leaving. Once your wife steps out on you, if you could, and again, if you think she is, you've confirmed it. Like I said, run it by a trusted friend that knows some shit, not just anyone, if you want to, but don't go snooping, because it's gonna make you act in certain ways. You need. I've already told. Go look at other videos, and you'll figure out how to. But you got to get out right away. Nothing's done rashly. Nothing's done, with anger. Keep your emotions in check. But get that friend next to you to help you out. You need an emotional buddy. You need an emotional. And I don't mean this to be, sound, like you're a bitch, but no, you need an emotional partner at that point. You need a whoopee cushion at that point, because it'll rock you. So anyway, but yeah, you got to get out. And so, like I said, so what do we learn from this? One, no morality and sexuality. The Alpha Bang was getting all the good play, The hero firefighter, once again, the beta male provider, working 2 jobs, a hero fireman and a manager at a Taco John's, meets a lady that's been married 5 times before. She knew how to prey on him. She knew, it's okay but if you're leading with money, if you're giving her things, if you feel like you have to do things to keep a woman around, if you feel like you got to keep her entertained, a woman should be happy just being around you, just hanging around you. She shouldn't need to be taken anywhere. She shouldn't need to be bought anything. The fact that she's able to hang around you, But again, you have to be worthy of that. You can't just be, you got. I say, look smacks, get to the gym, get jacked, And that was one thing I did notice. If you notice, Robbie Doer was not in the best shape. I'm not trying to go hard on him, but he definitely was not in very good shape. And if you're wanting someone to get affectionate with you and hold you and kiss you, well then you kind of got to be, you need to be sexy, and part of being sexy is getting in the gym and getting lean. Men should be about 15% body fat or less, but you got to get in if you want to compete out here, if you want to complain, bitch and moan about girls and how they take half your stuff, and you got to buy them this and buy them that, then don't go to the gym. Just keep working, be on your purpose, and you'll be a beta male mark. You'll be a target for some predator like Becky Doer, you know. So yeah, and like I said, once again, we discover, but Robbie Doer should have known, you got to know when you're not loved. You got to know when you're not respected. When you're not respected, you're not loved. When you're not respected and loved, and when he thought that affair was going on, he knows at that point, I got to get out, And so what ends up happening in a lot of these times when they're having the affair, the other person's having the affair, you've noticed, what have I said too? This is what you notice in a lot of them. Not only do you need to get out because she's having the affair, is that you need to let that dude have her. Because in a lot of these cases, we've seen the lover take out the beta male provider. He becomes a victim of the lover, And I've said this before, and this is and I'll end it here, but this is something that a lot of guys will have trouble with. But I've been involved in this, and when I was on the bad side, of the affair, the bad guy side, you become her number one, and the husband becomes the number two. And if she messes with him sexually or romantically, she now feels like she's cheating on you. Trust me, I know, and that's true. That's true. Shout out Rollo Tomasi. Go look at his stuff. But he said, when you're if you're number one, women only care about number one. I'm telling you. Then that's a feature, not a bug. They only care about the number one guy. The number two guy can go kick rocks. You don't care, and that's just life. That's just life. In that situation, you can't. It's the animal we got to deal with. We have our own features that women are probably frustrated with, but whatever. So like I said, that's the case of Robbie Doer. Don't think of this stuff in morality or good, bad, because there is no morality in sexuality, guys. There is no morality in sexuality. The alpha bang felon in this case was able to, get the best of Robbie Doer, and he lost his life because he didn't know these things. And that's why this stuff's important. That's why I want to teach this stuff. If you don't know this stuff, it's not just about, I didn't get laid. No, Robbie Doer lost his life because he didn't know how to deal with the situation, and he's a hero of our community. We honor him. All right, guys, be careful out there. We'll see you on the next one.